Hi, I'm Roger Berliner, District 1 Representative to the Montgomery County Council. I'd like to invite you to join me for a conversation with Washington, D.C. Councilmember Mary Cheh. That's coming up right here on County Cable Montgomery.
On this show, No Boundaries travels to Glen Echo Park. Once a premier amusement park, Glen Echo today is a center for visual and performing arts activities. The iconic Spanish Ballroom is the backdrop for a conversation between Montgomery County Councilmember Roger Berliner and DC Councilmember Mary Cheh. In the next 30 minutes, these two local leaders will share perspectives, discuss common concerns, and look to the future.
Mary Cheh, I am so pleased that we have this time together. We have so much in common. We both chair committees on our respective councils that deal with transportation and environment. We work together at COG on our Climate, Energy, and Environment Committee, and we are jurisdictional neighbors right there at Chevy Chase. Your ward comes right up to my district, and so we share a boundary. And
Right.
Here we are doing this show, No Boundaries.
This is perfect because, you know, it's not often we get a chance to talk like this, so that's a good opportunity for us.
It is, and here we are in the Spanish Ballroom. And have you been here before?
I have. One of my daughters took ballroom dancing here, and when my children were smaller, we would go to the carousel.
Isn't that a lovely carousel?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
My family and I lived right up the road, and we would come here and bring our kids to, I've got two kids too, and we'd bring them to the carousel, and they'd run around the park here, and so it is a place of great, just great
It's very
virtue.
sweet. It's very, very sweet.
That's a perfect word for it. It is very sweet. So not only do we have all these other things in common, but you're a lawyer.
Yes, I'm a lawyer.
You're
Not that we need many more of them.
you don't.
And I have spawned two lawyers,
And you
too.
spawned two lawyers.
I know.
But also what was true of you is you were the first person in your family to really graduate from high school?
That's right.
Well, talk about that.
You know, anytime someone learns of this, they always say, you know, well, how did that happen? How did you overcome that to become a lawyer and whatever? And I'm hard-pressed to say how that happened because it's a bit of luck, I guess. And I always wanted to do something. I didn't know what, but I always wanted to do something, and I always wanted to expand my horizons from where I was. And so, and then, you know, you have teachers along the way who encourage you, and then I don't know, that's how it happened.
And then what, Harvard Law was part of this background?
Apparently, yes, it was.
That's really quite impressive. And actually, I was sort of the reverse. I came up in a family where there was every expectation that, oh my goodness, you will go to a good school. And actually, it was probably said, but it was so imbued in in what it was to grow up with my family that that was always
that was it.
That was it. You were going to go.
Well, you know, my family was kind of dysfunctional. I recall calling my mother at one point and saying, "Hey, you know, I'm in college."
And it was news to her?
Yes. Sure, that's great.
Families are,
right.
yeah. Somebody used to say that.
But I've been lucky.
Well,
blessed.
you've also been pretty darn good.
Well.
Tell me about your experience in South Africa. I saw that you went to
yes.
South Africa. That had to be a very powerful experience.
Well, it was, and it was during the time of apartheid, though I have since been back, but I worked at the Center for Applied Legal Studies. They were a sort of a civil rights group in South Africa, even at the time. And what was interesting to me is that they found me useful, because one of the things I did there, they had a lot of articles and opinions by courts written in Afrikaans. Both languages, English and Afrikaans, were official languages. And if you had opinions written in Afrikaans, then you had to be an Afrikaans speaker, and in English. Well, they used to claim in these court opinions that in terms of free speech, they followed the United States First Amendment, which everybody knew had to be ridiculous, but they wanted to get a First Amendment law professor to debunk it. But then I had to go around with some opinions to different people and say, could you translate this for me? And I actually have an article in the South African Law Journal on the clear and present danger test, believe it or not.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Actually, again, my experience was almost the reverse of yours. My mother grew up in Fayette, Mississippi.
Oh.
So in 1960, when I was 9 years old, I would go down to Fayette, Mississippi with my grandparents. And this was the heart of the South where segregation was absolutely in force, so that there were white and colored drinking fountains,
Sure.
white and colored bathrooms. It was just, oh my goodness, another world.
In 10 years after Brown versus Board, which was 1954, 10 years later, because they were skirting the law at every turn, less than 1% of the schools in the South were integrated.
Yeah.
So how did you wind up coming north?
Well, I grew up in Cincinnati, which was, it was a wonderful place to grow up. Very stable, solid community,
Right.
and
Hilly.
and life was good.
Hilly.
Hilly, 7 hills and chilly, a lot of chilly. And the Cincinnati Reds, home of the
Right,
Cincinnati
right.
Reds, and so that was part of in my blood. And I'm actually now I'm a Nationals fan, and
Oh,
even
good.
when they play the Reds, I do root for
Good.
the Nationals, which is that's a big deal. That's a big deal. But I came to Washington in college days and knocked on doors to see if I could get an internship. And I was a speechwriter for a congressman named Nick Galifianakis, who ran against Jesse Helms for the United States Senate in North Carolina.
Wow. So you had this political instinct early.
I did. I did very early. And then I ended up staying here. I went back to Cincinnati, actually. Jerry Springer got me my first paid job.
Jerry Springer?
Jerry Springer.
This requires an explanation.
This is an explanation. Jerry Springer was a rock star. He was the best political figure in the state of Ohio and was really terrific. And he saw my work, and he went to a mayor who was running for Congress and said, you ought to hire this guy.
fellow.
And he did, and the guy won for Congress. And I came to Washington and worked for him and worked for senators. And then
So was your election to the council the first elective office?
it was. It was. And we were talking about our kids. I actually ran in a special election. I was actually Bill Bradley's advisor in Maryland when he was running for president. I was the state coordinator. And then a woman tragically died on the county council, and so there was a special election, and people came to me and urged me to run, and it was a 10-week race. My kids were young. I thought, I can do a 10-week race. That's not too hard. And she killed me. She just beat me.
Oh, so it was
Yeah, she beat me badly. I was like, whoa. And then somebody came up to
Need
me
more
and
than 10
said,
weeks,
you
I
need more
guess.
than 10 weeks, particularly when no one knows your
Right,
name. You know,
right.
name identification,
Right.
it does matter. So I lost then, and then I waited another 6 years, which was really a good thing, because I had young kids. I don't know how old your kids were when you ran, but it's so hard to be a good parent and
Right.
hold this kind of position. So I was really lucky that I lost. And then my kids were considerably older, and then
Right.
it was okay to do this work.
Well, you know, you may know this, but I'm also a full-time law professor and a member of the council. And if my kids weren't grown up, I don't know how I could do all this.
Yeah. I look at some of my colleagues who have young kids and go, really, how do you do
Because
this?
as you know, we have all day, and then we have night events and weekends, and
Yes.
But it's fun.
And we choose this.
right, and it's good.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good.
So tell me why you chose this. What inspired you?
Well, I wish I had a good story, but it's sort of a serendipity, maybe. There was a woman who had the seat I have, and she decided to run for the council chair, and it was on the same timetable as her seat. So she had to pick, and so her seat was an open seat. And I hadn't thought about it, but I had helped her. She wasn't a lawyer, but she had the Judiciary Committee, and I coached her kid in soccer. So always on the sideline, she's asking me, could I do this and could I do that? And finally, I conducted a major investigation for her, and it led to significant legislation. So I was yet again in her office, and someone said, you know, you really ought to run for the seat. And I said, why? I don't think so, you know. But she planted the idea. And then it's completely preposterous, really, that I'm in office because you say name recognition. No one on the local level knew me. I hadn't run for anything. I had no money, no organization, no anything. And I put my name in. It was after the fact that I said, "Huh, are you really going to do this?" And then, I don't know, I won somehow.
No Boundaries continues from the Spanish Ballroom at Glen Echo Park, where Montgomery County Councilmember Roger Berliner and D.C. Councilmember Mary Cheh pick up where they left off, talking about the issues about which they are passionate.
So Mary, we were both elected in 2006. Tell me what your passion's been on your council.
Well, you know, it's funny you say, I'm digressing here a little bit. 2006, I was on a TV show the other day, and I was introduced as a veteran lawmaker, and I was looking for the veteran lawmaker.
Really? It's like been 2 terms,
I know,
right?
I'm almost surprised, you know, that so much time has passed. But, you know, earlier we were talking about my situation and going from where I was to where I am now, and the key to that is education. And I'm passionate about that. Even though I'm not on the education committee, I'm passionate about that because I realize that education is pretty much the key to everything.
Yes.
And in the district, you know, in our schools that are not high performing, in fact, they're low performing, we handicap the children for their lives. Yes. Without an education. And not only that, we lose all of the talent that they could have brought to bear for us. And so I think it's sort of a crime that we put them through this whole process at the end of which they're handicapped to live a productive life. So I've been passionate about fixing our schools. That's a big item for me.
It is a big deal. And even in our county, where we have one of the finest school systems anywhere, the achievement gap in our community is not going away.
Right.
And so this correlation between people with low economic status and struggling in school is something that is so fundamental and ingrained throughout the country, let alone in
right.
your
And in
district.
my ward, we have quite excellent schools.
Yes.
But I'm talking about the entire district.
Exactly.
And the other thing that dovetails into that,
you and I are very similar in that regard. I have 2 of the finest performing schools in the state.
Right.
And again, it is the broader concern of what do we do with everybody else that wants the same opportunity.
Right. I've also, one of my signature laws is the Healthy Schools Act. See, I think when we have children in school, we're fiduciaries, and we have the whole child, and the whole school is an education. And I want them to have proper nutrition. I want them to have, I've restored, you know, real physical education. We have school gardens. You know, it's an environmental issue as well.
Good for you.
And I suppose I should turn it back on you. You know, what you.
Well, see, our situation's
passions.
a little different in terms of our school system because we've got an elected school board. And there are
that's
plenty of times when I wish I could be as proactive as you've been, and because we do approve the budget, but even though we approve the budget, we've got no line item, we've got no policy. It is really our elected school board in the state system. So it's sort of an awkward place to be. So I came to this work being an energy lawyer, never thinking that my energy background would be relevant. But as you and I know, we both are served by PEPCO.
Right.
And our community experienced the worst outages of any community in the country. They were, in Maryland, the lowest quartile 5 years in a row.
Same with us.
And it was like, oh no, this is not okay. So I was very active in that work and worked very hard to, actually I drafted what became a state law where we have reliability standards in Maryland now, which we didn't have before. And now they're getting better, and I collaborated with you and your colleagues in DC to see that, oh, we got to work on this together because we're both served by a utility that needs to get better.
Well, you know, I have been watching what you've been doing, and, you know, we have actually, without even knowing it, been working in tandem on these issues.
Yes.
I mean, knowing it to some extent, but not necessarily coordinating, because in terms of the reliability, I also had a provision whereby if they didn't increase their reliability, there would be penalties.
Yes.
And the penalties would not come out of ratepayer money. It
Right.
would come out of their profits.
It has to. Otherwise, it's like we're
Right.
paying them for their
Right.
penalties.
Right.
And again, I so envy in many respects your ability because you are, if you will, the state, and you
Right.
can direct your public service commission. Our county has no regulatory authority
Right.
over PEPCO, so I have to go on bended knee to our state legislature and do what you were able to do. And fortunately, they saw the wisdom in holding PEPCO accountable too.
Right, that's great.
Talk a little about biking. You are an avid biker.
Okay, I'm going to start with bad news.
Bad news.
On Monday, my bike was stolen
Oh my.
in the middle of the day on K Street
And with a lock.
with a lock. But that's the bad news.
Yes.
But the good news is that we share something else, and that is the District of Columbia has been fabulously successful with its bike share program.
Yes.
We have over 22,000 members of bike share. It's incredible, its growth, and we can't really keep up with it to some extent.
That is so exciting.
It is really exciting.
And again, we looked to you to say to our county officials, I'm sorry, do you see all these people on bikes right there? Oh, we can do this too. And so we launched ours.
Right, and you all have been doing what we've been doing, namely providing bike lanes.
Yes.
It's key.
Yes,
Right.
cycle tracks. I mean, I didn't see one until I went to Vancouver last summer and saw this
Go to
cycle track.
Copenhagen.
It's just
It's amazing.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And now one of my most recent initiatives is to make sure that when it snows that we actually plow the Capitol Crescent Trail because it connects with
Right.
your trail, which you guys do plow.
Right.
So we say, hey, I'm sorry, the District of Columbia can plow their trail. Why can't we plow ours? And
Somehow I hear in your voice, perhaps,
yes.
if DC can do it, for heaven's sake.
There's just a little bit of that, a little bit of that. Here's to making biking something that people actually feel safe doing and that we can actually, we have
Have
so
you
much to
biked
learn.
into DC?
I have not.
Oh, okay.
I'm still sort of shaky biker. I'm good on the trails. And traffic, not so much.
Well, we have the 15th Street cycle track, and we have other cycle tracks, and they're protected. On one side are parked cars, and on the other side is the curb.
I really admire so much of what you've been able to do in D.C. and the leadership you had in your transportation world. I thought Gabe Klein was terrific and
Yeah.
a good visionary, and we hope to have more of that in Montgomery County so that we can really
Well, you have
embrace.
to stay there and do it.
I'm planning on staying there and doing it.
For this final segment of No Boundaries, coming to you from Glen Echo Park's Spanish Ballroom, Montgomery County Councilmember Roger Berliner guides the conversation with D.C. Councilmember Mary Cheh to the environment.
What about your environmental work? Because you do great environmental work too.
Well, there again, we're partners. One of my signature acts there is my clean and affordable energy omnibus statute to go to a renewable energy position by a certain amount. We were the first in the nation to provide for benchmarking, which means all buildings, and we phased it in, have to say how much energy they're using.
I copied you again.
Okay, there you
Just
go.
we just passed it.
We've been working a lot on moving a bill dealing with recycling and waste and that sort of thing. That's not the sexy part of the environment, but it's a really important part.
Yes.
And I'm really excited about something we have. It may seem odd to people that I could get so excited about this, but we have these things called anaerobic digesters. Are you familiar with this?
I am because of Blue Plains.
Blue Plains, that's right.
And we're trying to say, I think that makes sense.
Okay,
We want
now,
to.
can we say poop on this TV thing?
I think we can.
Okay, so the idea is to take the poop and separate it
Yes.
out, and then to put it in these digesters with these bacteria, enzymes, and it's so perfectly sustainable because what they would do is they would create methane, which could create electricity.
Yes.
And if we got it really going as maximum as we could power the whole Blue Plains processes, which takes it's the largest energy user in the district.
It is. It's a big.
But that's not all. What's left over can be
It's
used
compost.
as fertilizer,
Yes.
right? Isn't that
It
amazing?
is. It's just unbelievable.
But I want all of these technologies to be put to bear, to make our city progressive and environmentally sound. You know, Roger, you're talking about the environment. I wanted to bring up something which I'm very much admiring of. environment is all pieces of our activity, and one of the things we need to do is to always make sure that our private businesses are vibrant, because that's the lifeblood of the city too, or in your case the county. And you've done some pretty imaginative things, so I wanted to hear you talk about that a little bit.
Oh, thank you. We talk about sustainability, and sometimes we act as though the economy isn't part of that equation, but sustainability includes the economy. So in our community, small business is big business, and our economy does well when our small business people are thriving. And our county is a pretty complex place to do business. I'm a regulatory lawyer. We have our fair share of regulations. So one of the things that I sponsored and my colleagues adopted and became law was the creation of what's called a small business navigator.
Navigator.
Somebody in county is there for small businesses to help them figure out how they can get through the maze and prosper without spending too much time worrying about it.
So if a restaurant wants to locate in an area, they can go to this office
Yes.
and say, what is it I need to do?
Yes, and they can also say, why is it taking so long, and do I really have to do this?
Oh, so it's sort of like an ombudsman
Exactly.
too.
It
I see.
combines an ombudsman and somebody that helps guide them, as well as somebody who does outreach and goes and meets with the small business community and
That's
says,
great.
what is it that I need to do for you? And so it's really, we're getting a lot of very positive reactions from the small business community.
How long
and
have you
that's-
had that in operation?
It's about 2 years now.
Oh, okay.
And so that's
Maybe
just
we should-
really,
I'm going to copy that.
you can copy that.
Okay.
And we've copied each other on
Yeah, yeah.
lots of stuff. Let's talk about something that I hope we will do together, and that is transportation. Because I've got a lot of people in my district and in our community who come down Connecticut Avenue, and they are going through your district
That's right.
to get to work. And I've got a lot of people on Wisconsin Avenue that coming down going to your community.
Right.
And so one of the things I hope we'll do in our community, we're talking about a concept called bus rapid transit, which I'm sure you're familiar with, which basically says if you have dedicated lanes for buses, it's almost as good as a subway, because basically you are moving
Right.
and you're saying goodbye to traffic. And we had planned on doing it all the way to Friendship Heights, right at our intersection. And we said, nah, we're not going to go that far, because it doesn't make sense to go to Friendship Heights unless we go all the way into the District of Columbia. And for that to happen, you and I have to get together
Right.
and figure out, can we make this work as a region working together?
Well, I think we've agreed that we should have a joint hearing
Yes.
on it. Transportation is one of those things. There are a lot of these things, the environment, transportation. We can't rely on political boundaries, because it transcends those boundaries.
Exactly.
And we can't be strangers to one another about something that really cuts across the jurisdictions. But let me just say, were you to take it to Friendship Heights, I mean, one reason to do that, even without a continuation of the rapid bus, is that you have the subway there.
Well, we decided to stop it at Bethesda for that very
I see.
reason, and then to go to, we wouldn't pick up a lot of riders, and so it didn't make sense to extend it unless we were going all the way into your community. And so that's why I hope over time we will have this joint, which is a big thing in and of itself, because I don't believe our two committees have ever sat down together in that
think so,
way.
no.
And we've got a lot that we're working on. You've got a streetcar that might be going up Georgia Avenue, and that was going to stop a little short of our community. We're going, really? We can't
Why?
just get it that far?
Well, I have a bill that I put in. It's going to be a long time in resolving it, but I want to reconfigure our transportation entities.
Yes.
I want to create a transportation or transit authority.
Yes.
And bring underneath it all of our modes of transit, whether it be bike share or streetcar or circulator bus or rapid transit
Yes.
bus. Because what we lack now, I think, is an overview policy of all of that to make it all fit.
Yep.
And we have to make it fit, and it would include you.
Well, and I just, again, I admire so much of the work you're doing, because right now our transportation department has responsibility for ride-on and everything else, and we're trying to get a Quarter Cities Transitway and a Purple Line and bus rapid transit, and we really need to talk about transit onto itself.
Right.
And have it led onto itself, as well as these alternatives like biking. We are trying to, again, learn from
Right.
DC and
It's
the
all
enliven.
multimodal.
It is.
I'm even going to, this is causing some people a little heartburn, I'm going to abolish the taxi cab commission. It's not a thing unto itself. Taxis are a form of transportation. It should all be under one umbrella.
How interesting. All right. I've got one final question for you.
What?
What's been the biggest surprise to you serving in public office?
The biggest surprise has been how important, and I think this is probably true for you, how important, and at the most local level, the constituent services are. Most of my constituents, I venture to say, have very little idea, or none, about all of the legislation I've passed and the things that I've done. But they know, and I'll see them in Safeway or I'll see them here, thank you so much for getting that tree limb down.
Yes.
Thank you so much for this. Thank you so much for
Yes.
that. And it's all extraordinarily local and specific.
That's my experience as well, and if I were to answer the same question, it would be how passionate people feel about things like sidewalks, speed bumps. Oh my goodness.
Oh.
It's just, it gets people so exercised. It splits communities apart, and just how passionate people feel. But you're absolutely right that one of the great pleasures in serving in these roles is how you touch people's lives so directly, so profoundly, much more so than all the other levels of government. And it's just so gratifying to do this work, and it's so gratifying.
And like you, I get great satisfaction out of it because, let's say it's a tree limb. That day when I understand that it's been taken care of, I will drive past there, look, yep, they've got the tree limb down, and I'll feel good about that.
It's like the Windex phenomena. It's like it's done. It's like not like some bill that's in the abstract. It's like you touched somebody's lives directly and made it better.
Right. It's great.
Thank you, Mary Cheh.
Thank you.
You have made people's lives better. It's a pleasure working with you, and let's work together even more closely going forward.
Absolutely.
Because there are no boundaries.
No boundaries.